You're not getting any younger, so...
Who cares about embarrassment? Don't be ashamed of anything. Sex, money, whatever.
Hey you! Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. A podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives. For a good reason. To make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz. And every week, I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people, just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? I was really nervous going to interview Gaby Dunn. I had met her once before when we did a book event together in Orlando, and then knocked my knees together as I emailed her manager and asked if she'd be cool about coming on my podcast. And she said yes. When I got to Gaby's house, I walked around the block 4 times. It's my little trick that I do when I'm feeling that social anxiety start to creep around my esophagus area. I walk around until I convince myself to just go inside and have a good time. I was nervous to interview Gaby because she's done so many of the cool things I'm trying to do, and she's been successful at them all. She writes books, hosts a podcast, is an actress, and writes TV shows. What do you ask a person that does all of that? Because all I wanted to ask her is how? Instead, I decided to ask Gaby questions that maybe nobody's asked her before. Like, how do you ignore the haters? And how have you become okay with doing a lot of different jobs and not feeling like you're all over the place? And, of course, Gaby, are you hiring an intern? Because I could start tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode with Gaby Dunn, an actress, a TV writer for Netflix show Big Mouth, the podcast host of Bad with Money, and a million other things. And just a reminder, be sure to check out the You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. I'd love to see you there. Welcome to the show, Gaby.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. First of all, thank you for allowing me in your home.
Oh, no problem.
I'm new to LA, so please tell me where I am.
You're in Silver Lake / Los Feliz area.
Okay.
It's very hip. It's the east side. I try not to leave this area at any cost.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Well, Allison, my comedy partner, lives in, like, the WeHo area, so it's the worst. I have to, go, it's pretty far. And, if I could just keep everyone in this little pocket of, Los Feliz, Silver Lake, Echo Park, that would be ideal.
I live on the west side of LA in Venice, and I don't have a car, so for me, I never leave. And then when I do leave, I'm like, LA, there's so much to you,
Venice is nice, though.
Yeah, it's a really cool, interesting area. I do feel like a little bit like a creep because I feel like I follow you everywhere you go. We're both from South Florida. Mm-hmm. We've both lived in LA, and now we're both in LA. I didn't really know you in any of these places, but I was
you were in New York.
Yeah, I'm like, this is super creepy. I feel like I'm always, in the same place as Gaby, but don't know.
No, I think a lot of people from South Florida are, in trying to either move to New York or LA.
Yeah.
I think South Florida, there's a lot of comedians weirdly from South Florida.
Why do you think that is? What's funny about South Florida?
I mean, the whole place is ridiculous. I think it's just something happens in our brains where it's too hot, and so everyone just acts insane there. Years ago, I went to this panel at the Miami Book Fair, and it was people who write about, why do your books take place in South Florida, essentially was the question. And all the people were just where else could anything happen? Look at the news stories.
So true.
Everything they write, they felt like it was justified because they were just it takes place in Florida.
Do you take anything from your early life in South Florida and use it in your comedy and your writing? Any inspiration?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's kind of if you just say you're from Florida, people are like, oh, we get it.
Yeah.
I think it helps with the sort of, because I don't have that East Coast sensibility. There's a lot of weird sort of trashy things that don't really add up.
Yeah.
And then when you say that you're from Florida or that you've lived in or spent time in the South, but even the South has a classy there's like a classy element to it that Florida just
no
wholly lacks.
No, well, I feel like northern Florida and southern Florida are two completely states within themselves. You know, like I feel like we in South Florida grew up as like a mini New York, but northern Florida is more like the dirty South.
Yeah, and someone I just did the New York Times dialect quiz, which my girlfriend made me do, and because we had a whole argument about how you pronounce crayon. And
ooh, how do you pronounce crayon?
Crayon.
What does she think?
Crown.
No way. Where's she from?
Kentucky. But she kept saying crown, and I was like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And she was like, it's wax and you write with it. And I was like,
crayon.
Are you joking right now? But it took like a while. And then she was like, take this quiz. So I took the quiz, and South Florida and New York have like the same dialect.
Oh, for sure.
Which makes total sense.
Because we are the same people, yet they vote very different. But that's a topic I don't even want to get into. You are a lot like me in the sense that you left Florida and you went to college out of state, and from there you sort of been moving around. Where do you consider your true home?
God, that's tough. I mean, I guess my family's still in Florida, but I don't know for how much longer they'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time, I mean, I went to college in Boston, and I feel a lot of the fiction that I write takes place in Boston. So, like, the young adult novel that Allison and I did, my character is living in Boston, and I have a comic book that I'm working on that's going to come out next year that takes place in Boston. So I think sometimes when it's like comes down to like writing about a place in taking from your real life and being like, okay, what do I know best that I can set the story here? And I don't like setting stories in New York or LA because it seems very bubble-esque.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, where can I set this that isn't New York or LA? And sometimes I'll set things in Florida. But like I like that I'm really into that show Claws. It's on TNT now, and that takes place in Florida, and there's so many little segments of that I'm like, yes. But a lot of times I set stuff in Boston. And I think that's just because I went to school there and I know it, and it's not and it doesn't have as much well, I guess it has like a lot of personality attached to it, but it doesn't have the stigma of New York or LA or Florida.
And I feel like if you set a story in New York or LA, people just automatically assume it's like every other story about New York and LA.
It's about acting or it's about comedy.
Right, which isn't even true, but I think people's mind just go there. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about the first time I found out about you, and I really do think it was in 2010 when you had the Tumblr 100 interviews.
Oh my God.
And why I think this is because, and this is going to make me sound so self-involved, it's because I think I found that project in 2010 and was like, ooh, I'm going to reach out and be one of her interviews. Yet back then, I literally was living at home in my parents' house and was not interesting at all as a person. But I even searched my Gmail. I'm like, please tell me I emailed Gabby in 2010, and I didn't find it. But shortly, tell us a little bit about 100 interviews. Why did you do this, and what did you take away from all of these convos?
So I was like 22 maybe, and well, a lot of the people were regular people, so it wasn't like you had to be some sort of very interesting person. The point of it was that like everyone's kind of interesting, but but yeah, it was like this project that I did on Tumblr where I interviewed 100 people in a year, and that was like one of the first things I did on the internet that like got any sort of traction or publicity or anything. So whenever somebody's like, it's funny because people will be like, wait, that name sounds familiar, why? And then they'll be like, oh my God, I remember her from the Tumblr blog. But anytime someone says that, I try to be like, keep your voice down. Shut the
What
fuck
Tumblr
up.
blog?
Yeah, shut up, be cool. Because a lot of it's like taken down, and I don't even think I own the domain anymore. But it was this thing that ended up getting, it was like just this blog I was doing, and then it ended up getting some publicity in the Village Voice at the time, and then that it kind of took off, and then that was where I first got my first literary agent, and then we tried to sell it as a book and it didn't work, and then I ended up getting dropped by that agent. A lot of bad stuff happened, and I ended up moving out to LA sort of because of it, because I had a following on Tumblr from this blog, and that was how I ended up finding my first like theatrical agent or whatever, lit agent, because I posted on the Tumblr and was like, hey, I'm writing scripts now. Does anyone here care? But yeah, it was just basically because I was working as a journalist, and I had gone to school for journalism, and I was working as an entertainment journalist, which was not what I wanted to do. I had done crime reporting, and I wanted to be like a serious quote unquote reporter. And so that's why I was like, let me do these interviews. But it was like I had a day job, and I was doing them like at night and on the weekend, and it like was like taking up so much time, and it was like taking up so much time with my relationship with my boyfriend at the time, and like it just like ate up my life for a year and was like way more intensive than I thought it was going to be. And I also thought no one would care. And then all of a sudden it became this thing that people were following, and I was like, now I can't give up or fuck this up or anything. So it became like incredibly stressful, but it was like a side project essentially that I was doing so that I could freelance for the places I wanted to freelance for.
You say, you know, you got a literary agent, you got dropped by them, and this was so early on in your career. Yeah. But do you remember during that time, were you excited by that, or were you just like, this is something that's happening and I'm just going to keep working hard? What was your mindset during that first moment of your mini big break back then?
Well, everyone at the time, I was living in New York, and it was like a big thing at the time to get like an Urban Outfitters book. Like, everyone kind of had these like book deals to write these essentially books that would end up like at Urban Outfitters. And I was maybe one of the only people I knew who didn't have a book deal. And we were all, again, like 22, 23, 24. It was like the New York lit scene.
Yep.
And I never quite fit in with them. And I also I was like one of the only people who didn't have a book deal. So I felt like shit most of the time. And like I was super competitive with everybody, and I was super competitive with my boyfriend at the time. And like it was just like I wasn't very, I think, mentally or emotionally healthy about any of it. And I was like, couldn't sleep, and I like was like, I know that while I'm sleeping, other people are working, and this is why I don't have this, and this is why I don't have this. And I was just like consumed with like trying to get the same things that everybody else had. But then a lot of these people that were my friends that had these deals, like it didn't really end up going anywhere. But I just had this thing of like the optics of success, and I was so upset that I didn't have, you know, and I was upset that, but now I think about it and I'm like, the 100 Interviews book I don't think would have been good. I was 22 years old. There was a lot of stuff in it that I didn't even know about myself that like, I just don't think it would have been a good book. But I don't know, any 22-year-old would be like, look back and, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think anyone would look back and be like, the book I wrote at 22 was good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I read my thought catalog articles from when I was 22, and I'm like, can this site
garbage.
Please delete them?
Right.
Like, please take them away.
So, yeah,
but you know what's interesting is that
one was good. I think out of like the 2 years I worked there, I think I did one real good article.
Okay, well, I was creeping on you this morning, and I went back to your very first thought catalog article, and there was one, I think your second one was about a wedding, and it was actually really freaking good. But
it was about, what was it about? Not knowing anyone at a wedding?
Yeah, like things you can do, and it was like really, really, really awesome.
God.
But you know what's interesting about what you said is people always say the generic thing of like surround yourself by 5 people who are doing like really awesome things you want to do, but sometimes that can make you go insane.
Oh, it's horrible.
What kind of people do you think you should surround yourself with if you want to be happy in life?
People who are not in your industry.
You're the first to say this, and I like that because I sort of think that's true.
Yeah, my girlfriend doesn't work in entertainment, and it's like, I mean, Allison and I we want to do different things, but I think like it gets competitive between us, and like, I don't know, I think you need people around you to remind you that none of it matters. Like when I was living in New York, I would be like, everything that's happening in New York is the only thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And then I would talk to someone and they would be like, I don't even know who that is. And I'd be like, that's the most famous poet in the city. And they'd be like, we literally live in North Carolina and we do not care. Do you know what I mean? And so it would like, anytime I would leave the city, I would get perspective and be like, oh, none of this matters. And I had a boyfriend at the time who was much older. And I was like so immersed in this like early 20s lit scene. And he would be like, this does not matter. None of this matters. No one cares. And, we like went to a reading by this person that I was so jealous of, and he was like, and I was like devastated, and he was like, this stuff isn't good. And I would be like, but it doesn't matter, she has a book, blah, blah, and he'd be like, I'm like 10 years older than you, and I'm telling you now that when you're my age, you will not care. And it's like, looking that way.
Yeah.
And so I think like you need people who are outside of what you're doing to smack you in the face and be like, it doesn't matter.
I completely agree with that. Since then, you've added a lot of titles to your name. You're an actress, a podcaster, a YouTuber, a best-selling author. Why or how did you tell yourself throughout all of this, hey, Gabby, it's okay to be more than one thing? Because some people latch on to one job title, and then if they even try to do something else, they feel flaky or they feel like people are going to judge them.
No.
How did you become okay with saying, you know what, I'm going to do 5 different things, 10 different things with my life?
What? A fear of death. I don't know. It's like you have to, nothing is going to be the thing. Nothing lasts. There's no end game. You just have to keep working. So I don't understand people who have only one project and then they're like, well, this project isn't moving forward. And I'm like, well, what are you doing in the meantime? Like, I feel like I'm not okay unless I have like 4 or 5 different things going on, because I have to be like, there's something to, this is like way more dramatic than I mean it, but there's something to live for in the next year, or like there's something to live for in the next year. Like I can't, like if I just had the Bad with Money show, that last episode is in end of July. What am I doing in August?
Yeah.
Like I have to like keep moving, like, you know, then the Bad with Money book comes out in January, so I'm like, okay, that's something. So now I'll at least live till January, and then like, do you know what I mean? Like
I'm the same way.
I have to have multiple things going on, because at any point someone can pull the rug out and go, we're not actually doing this, and then you need to have 4 other things to go. That's fine. Even with screenwriting, like I have one movie that we just did a short for that we want to turn it, that we have this feature script and we want to get funding to make the actual feature that we have the script for. But in the meantime, I've got 4 other outlines, because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, nothing is anything, we're all going to die.
Do you ever find that you exhaust yourself?
Yes.
And how do you get over that?
I don't know. I have this list of like all the projects that I have going on, and so I just check it obsessively. And so I'll like look at it and be like, is there anything I can do for any of these right now?
Nice.
No, I can't. Okay, then calm down. 10 minutes later. Is there anything I can do for any of these right now? No? Okay, you're fine. I don't have like a good, healthy balance on anything.
I think that's okay. I'm sick of people who are like, you have to have a balance, you have to have self-care. Like, I feel like you have to do what you want to do in that moment.
I mean, I don't think it's good. I have a dog now, so that's
which
pretty
I must
exciting.
say is a game changer. I'm sitting here petting him and it's magical. How did you realize that you could be all of these things? Like, how did you tell yourself, you know, I'm a writer, but I also want to act. I also want to have a podcast. I also want to do all of these different things. Like, how did you even tell yourself, let's give it a try?
The acting stuff took a while because I felt like calling yourself an actress was vain or something. Yeah. So I I was acting for a long time before I ever like put actress in my bio or even said that I was an actress. And now I'm in classes and like actually doing like the whole thing. But I acted in an MTV pilot in 2015, but I would not have said I was an actress. And then if you were like, well, what are you doing? I'd be like, oh, I'm just in it. And they'd be like, but that's acting. And then like, you know, at the time they were like, go to acting classes. And so I went and got some coaching or whatever. But so like a lot, I've never like, and I audition. I don't think I've ever booked anything based on an audition. I think it's always people going like, we know you and we know what you do and we like you. But that one took a while because I just felt like it was such a stigma attached to being that. But I also think like, if you don't call yourself the thing, no one else is going to call you the thing. So if I want to get invited to podcast conventions and like promote my show and like actually have my show do well, I have to be like, I'm a podcaster. If I actually want to get cast and stuff, like my manager and I, he was like, put a reel together. So I cut a, because I was literally in season 2 of a Starz sitcom. And I was like, I don't think I need a reel. Like, I was like, I think it's fine. And so he was like, cut together all your scenes from the show. And like, you know, so I put together all this stuff and then now like I posted that and like now it's like I audition and do stuff. So I don't know, you just have to like not be embarrassed, and I guess you have to be like, I'm diversifying so that people will hire me to do stuff. I just would love to be hired. If anyone could just hire me, I would love to work.
But you say something interesting in the sense of you have to do the work. Like, nobody's going to put together a reel for you. No one's going to necessarily knock on your door and say,
and
do a podcast.
And don't be embarrassed. And I like can't be embarrassed to be like, I'm an actress, because then I'll be like, I have to like have this reel so that my manager can go, here's her reel. She's an actress. Like, she's in classes. She's an actress. And I have to just be like, yeah, that's okay. And it's like, it's still embarrassing to me a little bit to be like, here's my acting. But, like, I don't know. You just have to, because it's like, then in my mind I go, but you'll be on something and then people will pay you and then you can work with your friends. Like, what are the benefits?
Pretty much, I feel like all of the work you do makes you have to be such a vulnerable person. You write about your real life a lot.
Oh, everything's embarrassing.
How do you say to yourself, I'm going to put out there to the world who I am and everyone's going to have to deal with it?
Well, I used to, on Thought Catalog, when people would say something mean, I would cry for like a day.
Those comments are the worst.
So mean. I would cry all the time. I literally, like, will get a death threat, like, give it, like, be like, oh, report it to Tumblr, and then, like, have coffee. Like, nothing bothers me anymore, which is very bad. I'm probably dead inside. But, I will just, like, it doesn't even register to me. Like, my girlfriend will be like, you did what? And I'm like, yeah, I woke up, I reported a death threat to Tumblr, I had some coffee, I walked the dog. Like, I have no concept of, like, anything. Yeah. And it's funny because she's not on the internet at all anymore, so she's very confused. Like, she'll be like, how does this person know my name? And I'll be like, right. I think, like, I don't know. I when I first started writing stuff, like on Tumblr, when I first started making videos, I had friends in real life who were like, you're being embarrassing. This is embarrassing. Or, like, I had a guy who wrote me an email being like, look, I want to be friends with, like, a friend from college being like, look, I want to be friends with you, but, like, you're making videos and, like, writing about your real life and, like, posting stuff, and, like, it's honestly, like, embarrassing, and you should be embarrassed and ashamed, and you should stop. And, like, I always think about that because now, like, this is my whole thing, and I don't know what he does, and I don't know what this other girl who's not being my friend does, but, like, they wanted careers in comedy and they don't have them. So it's interesting, like, I don't know. I'm sure there are other YouTubers I've talked to who have said that when they started their channels, friends in real life were like, you're embarrassing yourself.
Yeah.
But then they're, like, you know, wildly successful. So I think sometimes people are, they want to be doing the thing and they're too embarrassed to do it, so they're mad at you. Yeah. But I also am, like, a very annoying person. So, like, I think, like, there's something to not being embarrassed or not having any shame. And, like, Allison and I have posted, like, 1 or 2 videos a week for 4 years. Are they all good? No. Mostly they're bad. Like, I look disgusting in some. I look good in others. Like, and I there was a quote where it was talking about Amy Poehler, about her being on SNL, and one of her strengths being that she was like, oh, I look ugly in this, who cares? And I was like, yeah, like, we post, like, I was like, oh, my hair looks disgusting, but or I look fat or whatever. But I'm like, I'm never gonna not post it. Like, I'll be like, we made it, may as well post it. And I think it's just the volume of stuff. You stop being as embarrassed. Because you're like, yeah, you click one video, wow, I look really good. You click another video, I look horrendous. Welcome to being a person. Some days you look good, some days you look bad, and here we go.
What was your process to make you feel comfortable with yourself so that you could say this about yourself out loud?
Nothing. I'm very uncomfortable with myself.
You think so? I feel like in a way you're really comfortable with who you are.
Yeah, I think so, but it's also, like, been such a public learning process.
Yeah.
Like, all my relationships were public, and, like, definitely, like, I've made huge public mistakes, and you can't really take those back. And, like, if I had been maybe older when I had some visibility, maybe I wouldn't have made such horrible mistakes in the public eye. And, like, you know, there's just stuff that, like, something bad will happen, and then on top of that, you also have, like, 700,000 people being like, why did you do that? Mm-hmm. And you have to be like, I don't know why. I was 25 and a moron. Yeah. There you go. Like, yeah. And, like, I think, you know, there wasn't, I didn't really understand how many people were looking at me at certain points. And now, you know, I'm older and I'm like, oh, they are. And you have to kind of figure out, like, what criticism actually matters. And there is a lot of criticism of me that is on point. For sure, 100%, I agree with you. And a lot of times I'll write back to those people and be like, yeah, you are correct. Absolutely. And then the other stuff you just have to be, like, if someone's like, fuck you, feminist bitch, you're like, all right, you I don't really care about. But if someone's like, hey, that thing you did was actually, like, hurtful for this reason, I'm like, yes, okay.
Thank you.
I get it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I'm very, I don't think I think a lot of stuff I did in the beginning was not great, and I also am not 100%. I think people come at me thinking that I'm going to defend myself a lot of times, and I'm like, oh no, I was wrong.
Yeah.
So, like, that's not, I don't know if that's being uncomfortable with yourself, but it is, like, it's not being, like, 100% confident the way I see some people be like, no, I was right here and here and here and here. And I'm always like, if someone's mad about something I think is legit, I'm always like, no, you're correct. Continue with your hatred.
But I think that often takes a sense of really believing in who you are and also believing that you can admit you're wrong when you're wrong, which is such an amazing thing.
That changes all the time.
Oh, for sure. One of the things I want to bring up is you leaving Buzzfeed, which I know is a huge topic, but I bring it up because you sort of had two decisions there, right? You can stay, work for Buzzfeed, do videos for them, or you and Allison could leave and do your own thing. What was it like to say, I'm going to leave so that I can now own all of my work that I do? What was that process for you like?
Yeah, I mean, we were selling television shows, and it was basically like, if we were selling television shows while we were working there at the time, we were like, if they found out, we were going to be fired. Now they're like, do whatever you want. Like, literally right after we left, they were like, oh, you want to sell a television show? Totally fine. But when we were working there, it was like, if you were working in the mainstream industry at all, you were like going to get fired. And we had like a couple close calls where we were like, oh fuck, this is it for us. And so, but like, we were like, well, we're working, like, we're writing for television and we're working, so it's okay to leave. None of that went the way we wanted it to go. Obviously, like, you were in this town, like, you could sell like 1 million shows and none of them would air and you would still have money and be, it's very weird. There are people in this town who are like successful, quote unquote, but you have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
And so, like, we did a Sundance workshop, and Stephen Falk, who created You're the Worst on FX, he was talking about how before You're the Worst, he'd sold 9 shows. None of them had gone. One of them, they had even shot the entire first season and it never aired. It's devastating.
Oh, I've been there, yeah.
It's devastating. So Allison and I were sort of like looking at each other during that, him talking about that, and we were like, oh, well, we're halfway there. And so, like, yeah, BuzzFeed was very different when we were there versus what it is now. If we had no prior history and they approached me to work there now, I might have a different opinion about it, because now they seem to care about talent and actually, like, allow people to, like, have their own stuff. That being said, when you leave, they do keep everything. So, like, I have friends who are leaving now who are, like, have to say goodbye to their podcasts and have to, like, say goodbye. And, like, I would not have been okay. I think about, like, if I had started Bad with Money there, and then if I had wanted to turn Bad with Money into a book, or if I how much control would they have had over me continuing Bad with Money? What if I had left and I wouldn't have been able to keep doing the show? And, like, that's devastating. So there were decisions of, like, basically leaving a paycheck, leaving healthcare, but also, like, I don't know what would have happened to any of my stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of Bad with Money, which is my new favorite podcast, right now I'm listening to the Amazon episode, and I'm just completely blown away of everything I'm learning in this episode.
Me too. That's the point of the show. I'm constantly like, what?
But one of the things I wanted to mention was you wrote an article called Get Rich or Die Vlogging, which really exposes what a influencer or a vlogger goes through and how people assume that they are millionaires, but really, just because they have 1 million followers, they might have no money. So what is the truth behind that?
Well, I think people don't understand that there's a difference between income and wealth. So a lot of people don't understand that there's, like, people have different backgrounds. So, like, some YouTubers are starting from a place where they have family money, or they had a day job that paid really well and they saved, or whatever it was, while doing YouTube or before doing YouTube. And then I kind of didn't understand that, and I came from a place of, like, family obligation, medical debt, like, student loans, stuff like that, like, I didn't realize everyone didn't have. And so, I guess I kind of knew. But, so anyway, so people assume that if every YouTuber is making the same amount of money, which is not true, but let's say we all are, that doesn't mean that everyone has the same obligations. So, like, you can have a similar income to someone, but not similar wealth.
Sure.
And so, but a lot of times, but YouTube doesn't really pay that well. A lot of stuff they want you to do for free or for exposure. A lot of our stuff in particular is demonetized for being queer, which is like a thing of demonetizing LGBTQ content, which has been going on for years. They just started running anti-gay ads on stuff.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised they let them do that.
Well, they paid. The advertiser paid, so why not? Right. So, but the advertiser can also target. They said that they haven't, but yeah, they will run anti-gay ads before my stuff, which is I can opt out of it, which is whatever, but I only got alerted to it by the fans who were like, hey, this anti-gay ad is running on your video, which is okay, but my audience is a vulnerable audience. I don't think they should have to see that before they go on my, it should be obvious, but so there's not a lot of money to be made there, and you can only contest demonetization if your video gets a certain number of views in a certain number of hours. So it's not a great place to make money. And then people have Patreon, but I always feel guilty, especially with a queer audience who doesn't have a lot of money. I feel guilty asking for money from them. And there's just this thing of not being compensated for your work, which I think happens in a lot of industries. I think artists and freelance writers, and there's this Tumblr that I follow called Clients from Hell, and they talk often about clients being well, I want you to do more work, but I don't want to pay you for it. And I think that's kind of the whole thing with YouTube is some girl just came at me being well, I'm sure you make enough money to attend these VidCon and put yourself up and because it's worth it for all the exposure and panels and networking. And I was panels and networking are not gonna, one, don't assume my income, and two, panels and networking are not gonna get me dinner or pay my rent.
It pisses me off more than anything when people ask for free. For you to do things for free. And not only that, when they assume you're making tons of money. You wrote in this article, there was a time when you had 500,000 YouTube subscribers, 70,000 Twitter followers, but you had no money in your bank account.
Right. And that was also because I think financial literacy in this country is messed up. So I had and I had no concept of anything, and I buried my head in the sand. I have friends who come from means who are very good at, one of my friends who's wealthy was I had my own bank account when I was 15. And so she knew all this stuff, and she was why don't you know this stuff? And I was because I come from a trash background. I don't know what you want. So it's, I had to pull my head out of the sand and actually look at things and look at the numbers. And it's a full-time job to do this money stuff, and I've turned it into a job by having the podcast and the book and all that stuff. But sometimes I think about if I wasn't doing this as a job, which I don't make that much money from the podcast, but if I wasn't doing this as a job, would I A, have any motivation to do it, and B, I'm not even that good at it, and it's still so hard. So imagine if you have a job, how does anybody know any of this stuff? How does anybody have time to look at any of this?
Don't you think it's crazy that we go to school for so many years and they don't teach you once about taxes or bank accounts or 401ks?
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
It's almost I don't want to talk bad about the world, but it's on purpose.
Yeah, of course it is.
Crazy.
It's to maintain a status quo, for sure.
When did the idea hit you to start Bad with Money podcast? When did you think to yourself, I'm bad at this and I want to admit that to the world?
Well, it started with the article. And it's again this thing of being embarrassed, so sharing it. But I was crying all the time, and Allison and the boyfriend at the time were you can't live like this. And I still, maybe a month and a half ago, I spent an hour crying in my room about money while my sister did her laundry in the living room, and then it was just knock knock, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just gonna cry for another hour. Okay. And so I think. I don't think I have it perfect by any means, and I think sometimes when something is so painful and you share it, what happened was an influx of other people being definitely an influx of people chastising me and being you're an idiot, which is to be expected by anything that I put out, but then another influx of people being this is great, this is great. The reactions I get from it are so worth it and wonderful, because it's just people being I looked at my bank account today because of you, Yeah. And if I can help with that at all, or at least erase the stigma. What I started doing with season 1 and what I wanted to do was okay, so you already feel bad about being shitty with money or being poorer than your friends, broke, whatever. And then you also feel embarrassed about it. So just get rid of the top layer of embarrassment. Yeah. Talk to people about it. Ask people. And I would see people on Facebook being like, does anyone have a good accountant? Or does anyone know, but only in like private groups for women. Mm-hmm. Because I think like a lot of my emails that I got that were condescending were from men being like, this is why you don't know this. You're a dum-dum. And like, and so I think like a lot of times women in particular were embarrassed to admit that they were bad with money. So it would be like in these private Facebook groups, they'd be like, hey, does anyone like understand this contract or whatever?
Because for years, women would get married to men who would do all the finances. And then if something happened in that relationship, women would be screwed. Yeah.
I talked to a woman named Sally Krawcheck who runs this company called Elevest, which is for women in investing. And she was talking about how when she got divorced, she was like, oh no, I don't know anything. Mm-hmm. And then she was working on Wall Street and she had all these like male coworkers who were shitty to her, and she said she like would go back to her desk and there would just be like Xerox penises on her desk. Like Wall Street in the 80s.
Yeah.
And so she was like, the worst time in the world to figure out money is when you, like what happened to her, which is her husband cheated on her and then left. And she was like, and then I had to figure out money. And she's like, you don't want to also like, women outlive men in general. So she was like, you don't want to be like 80, your husband just died, and now you have to figure everything out.
Why do you think money is such an awkward topic?
Because it's connected to moral and intellectual failing, right? So like, if you are bad at it, people think it means you are stupid or you are a bad person. Mm-hmm. There's something called the prosperity gospel, which is this idea, and it's connected to religion, but it's this idea that if you are wealthy or good with money, you are inherently a good, better, more pious, righteous person. And if you are bad with money, that is your own fault. It's individualized. So it's like, you're a bad person, it's your own fault, you don't deserve any of our help. Fuck you if you want welfare or government assistance. Fuck you if you want healthcare, good healthcare. Like, it's this thing that makes, I think also like, with the election, like it makes poor white people turn against their own interests. It's tied to racism for sure, but it's like, this thing where you think, well, if I'm going to get my shit together one day and then I don't want to help anyone else. And so I think it's this, I individualized American dream myth that is like, and then if you're bad with money, you're inviting everyone to be like judgmental towards you rather than as a group realizing this thing is fucked up and actually like helping or like help. Because like actually data shows that the people in your direct neighborhood actually can help you the most with money because you all tend to have more similar lives.
Sure.
So if you literally went to your neighbor and was like, how much do you pay in taxes? And you guys could talk about it, you would get better information than anything you could Google.
So how do we have those conversations? Because talking about money is awkward. Asking someone how much they make, going on a date and figuring out who's going to pay. Like, how do we make those situations not awkward?
You just have to. You just have to talk about it. I talked to a couple that this girl, she was on a different podcast. She was like, oh, my husband and I or my fiance and I just talked about money. Mm. And I was like, you got as far as being engaged? Are you kidding me? How did it not come up? And like, I just think you have to, I don't know, you just have to. And you have to like ask friends and like people get mad. I mean, there's this new movement of like salary transparency where everyone at the company will share what their salaries are. And I think I've never like seen it in practice, but the people I've talked to seem to be into it. I talked to this guy at a company called Summall, where they, I think it's the guy who did Squarespace. And basically they have salary transparency, and there's an episode on my show about it, but he's like saying that, it's good for, like getting the conversation going and people actually getting paid what they're worth.
Yeah. Especially women.
Yeah, especially women and people of color and all in between. And I think like, I just think you have to, I think if you start being okay with it, then other people will be okay with it.
For sure.
Send them my podcast.
Oh, I'm telling you, that cryptocurrency episode on your podcast, I was like, thank you for explaining this nonsense to me.
I still don't understand it, and I own Bitcoin.
You did a good job of breaking it down. You broke it down multiple times. I'm like, all right, great, because I missed it the first time, so now I'm finally getting it.
Well, thank you. I literally have a Coinbase wallet app on my phone, and every day I look at it, and I'm like, I don't know what this means, but it seems fine.
It's confusing stuff. So I want to end with a quick lightning fire round. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Just say whatever comes to mind when you think of it.
Okay.
When you were a kid, what did you want to become?
Mission control for NASA.
What's your dream job now?
God, I don't know. Someone who can make whatever they want. Director? I don't know. Actor? Someone who can just, like, make stuff.
What is the best advice anyone has ever given you?
It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be done.
I love that. What's a moment of failure that you can tell us about?
I mean, every second of every day. I don't know. We've had 4 television shows that didn't go. And I've been at Disney World when 2 of them have been emailed to me that we did twice. Twice a show had been called or emailed about a show not getting picked up while at Disney.
So never go to Disney again?
Disneyland, sorry, not Disney World. But twice that's happened to me.
That is the worst.
And then you just still have to, like, go about your day at Disneyland. Because you're with people.
It is not the happiest place on earth, whether or not that happens to you.
It's honestly cursed for me.
It really is. I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so...
Who cares about embarrassment? Don't be ashamed of anything. Sex, money, whatever.
Thank you so much, Gabby. Tell our listeners where they can find more about you, your podcast, and your new book coming out.
Oh gosh, okay. I'm at Gaby Dunn on Twitter, at Gabby Road on Instagram, which is a stupid Beatles pun. And the podcast is called Bad with Money. It's anywhere podcasts are found. Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. And then the Bad with Money book will come out in January. We should have a cover reveal soon, I hope. And what else? I don't know. Just Between Us is me and Allison's channel. That's youtube.com/justbetweenusshow. And then I have my own channel. Sometimes I post stuff, which is youtube.com/nofunGabbyDunn. I don't know. What else do I do? I think that's everything for now.
Well, we'll find out more. Yep.
You can watch Take My Wife. It's on the Stars app. I'm on it. It's a really good queer sitcom. And season 1 and season 2 are both available on iTunes as well. And I'm in season 2, but watch season 1 so you have context for why I'm there.
Is there going to be a season 3?
I don't know. I'm only an actor. I don't know anything. I hope there is a season 3 and I'm in it.
I hope so too. And if you have any jobs for Gabby,
please hire me.
Let her know. Thank you so much, Gabby. You are so awesome. Thank you. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.